After a long half year of waiting, Mushoku Tensei Part 2, not Season 2, I see you guys making those rookie mistakes, Part 2 is here, and I thought it would be the perfect time to rewatch the series so far and give a quick overall review of it before I start my weekly reviews of Part 2, link in the description. So strap in everybody, because there are no breaks, but as you will soon find out, going fast isn't actually always the best option. This is Mushoku Tensei Part 1, the great start to a better series. Now, Mushoku Tensei is an isekai. You know what it is, you know what the setup will probably be. You don't even need me to tell you, I bet, that this is one of the pioneers of the genre, because it doesn't matter. It's no easy feat to make as dead of a horse as isekai is today feel fresh again, and that's exactly what Mushoku does. From the outset, Mushoku Tensei sets itself apart through its pacing, through the way that you learn about the world, through the way you learn about its characters, and through how little actually happens within its first 4 episodes, and even further beyond. This is my favorite aspect of Mushoku Tensei, a story that is carefully and meticulously set up in a way where the escalation starts quite literally from ground zero as a baby just wandering the house. It starts here and it evolves into greater and greater things. It's not concerned about having some crazy action set piece in the first episode to hook viewers, or to even give the viewer a glimpse of the outside world until over 2/3 into the series. This is a story that goes at its own pace, doles out information as it feels ready to, and that is what makes everything feel so much bigger, more fleshed out, and deliberate. The world building in this series is excellent, by the way. It's natural, it's grounded, it's diegetic, it never feels like characters are reading you exposition, and I know some people may want that. There's been cut information, there's little details that didn't translate from the novel to the anime, but in my opinion, the way information has been communicated here feels a lot more cohesive and a lot more interesting than just hearing somebody explain a bunch of meandering details. The slower, more natural pace works to its advantage and also makes some episodes like Turning Point 1 or even the finale feel so much more important when the rest of the series is generally focused on these smaller stories of the mundanities of life and the characterization of its cast. Speaking of that cast, let's talk about them, because for all intents and purposes, this is the main point of contention with people who don't like Mushoku Tensei. It has a tendency to portray characters who are really bad, not great people, and for some, the flaws of these characters might be so strong that it's hard to really become attached to them, even in spite of some genuinely great and nuanced character writing. Don't get me wrong, everyone loves Sylphie, everyone loves Eris, everyone loves Ruijerd. These are immensely likable characters who subtly grow and change over their roles in the series. Even someone like Roxy, who has little to no screen time in the grand scheme of things, still has her own growth and change as she grows closer to Rudius. The problem is Rudius, and it's Paul, and it's Eris's father. Pretty much every male in the series, actually, other than Ruijerd, is kind of a piece of shit in their own way, and it takes really getting into a specific mindset to really appreciate how the flaws of these characters are written and how they're tied into the story. One common theme throughout all of Part 1 so far is that characters aren't necessarily who they appear to be on the surface, and this is intrinsically tied to the flaws that Rudius and the other characters have. They have terrible aspects to their personality, they've done terrible things, but that doesn't make them terrible people. The entire driving force of the series so far is Rudius getting a second chance at life with the goal of really leading a fulfilling one that he didn't in the real world. There's a lot of resonant, impactful stuff here told through these flaws that I think elevate these characters like Rudius or Paul in a way where I wouldn't just dismiss them as unlikable assholes. They are likable, they are caring, they're charismatic, they're fun. It's a little something we like to call in the real world an actual human being. If you want to hear a much more in-depth take on this, I made an entire video about why I think it's okay to like Rudius as a character. However, it's hard to talk about Mushoku Tensei without talking about its production. You could be a completely normal person who has no interest in animation, or you could be the biggest Sakuga nerd ever. It doesn't matter. The sheer level of effort, talent, passion, and ambition essentially flies off the screen when you are watching Mushoku Tensei, and I think it's something that anybody can notice. It gives the world and the story a level of immersion that you just can't really find in any other isekai series. It's easy to look at this and just say, yeah, it looks good, but there are so many different aspects to the production that prop up how you get invested in what's going on. And some of them don't even have to do with the visuals. Obviously, you have the stuff like animation, art direction, backgrounds, character designs. All of this stuff is top notch, as you can clearly see, but it often goes a lot deeper, like the way attention is given to the tiniest details in Rudius's house, or the fact that the demon continent has an entirely different language being spoken the entire time. Little extra bits of effort that no other studio would likely even bother with, but that make the story feel so much more alive. So for a review of Mushoku Tensei, this is sounding a lot more like I'm just sucking the show's dick, and what can I say? If you didn't already get the picture, this is a solid, quality anime so far that I highly recommend to anyone, as long as you're aware of those more sus aspects to its characters and the fact that it might take an episode or two until you appreciate what it's doing with their flaws. But that doesn't mean that this series is perfect or even close to perfect at this point in time, and a lot of it has to do with pacing. Now, that might not make any sense considering I was just talking about the pacing being its greatest strength not even 5 minutes ago, and trust me, I do not have dementia, let me explain. With this series, you really have to consider perspective, size, and scale in relation to its pacing. A story that is slowly setting things up and escalating more and more is fine. It's perfect, actually. Again, I love that aspect. But this is a 25 volume series and counting, and so far the anime has covered three volumes. We are barely a 10th into this overall story, and you can really feel that. In the grand scheme of things, we are very much still in a setup phase, and it's hard to say a series has reached its full potential when almost everything it's been setting up so far hasn't actually paid off yet. Am I saying that this is a bad thing? No, absolutely not. All I'm saying is that I'm not jumping to say that this is the greatest series ever until we start getting into the payoffs that this season has been setting up. On a more minute level, I do think a lot of this part's weaknesses don't necessarily come from the stuff that's in it, but more so from the stuff that's not in it. Cutting exposition and little bits of lore is fine, since that stuff will likely reappear in the series at more natural points anyways, but in the novel, there are inner POVs for characters like Rudius and Zenith in dramatic, emotional sequences that would have fleshed their characters out even more so at this early stage in the story. And it would have helped explain some plot points that I've heard anime-onlys complain about as well. Some of them are ultimately pretty minor, but there are others that I have personally read that really gave me completely different perspectives on Rudius in moments where I think he could have really used them. It's an adaptation, there's always going to be sacrifices that need to be made, but in some of these cases, I really would have liked to see them included. Overall, Mushoku Tensei Part 1 is an understated, slow-paced introduction to what I can only assume will be a much grander, climactic, epic experience. And yes, I know the word epic doesn't have any sense of legitimacy anymore, but I genuinely can't think of any other word to describe what they're setting up here. Assuming we continue getting more seasons with this level of quality all the way to the end, this really does feel like a Lord of the Rings tier fantasy epic in the making. I'm extremely excited for part 2, and if you're excited for part 2 as well and want to hear my thoughts on each episode every single week, you're in luck, because by the time this is uploaded, my review for part 2 episode 1 will be out, and the journey will continue again. Link is in the description, and if you want to chat with me or my community about Mushoku Tensei, or anything really, a link to my Discord server will also be in the description below. Thank you all for watching, I hope you are having a wonderful day, I love you all, and I will see you in the next video.